Well, if you would, turn your attention to Exodus chapter 14 and verse 10 through 16. And let me just say this to you. This is a year to both turn and to return. I heard the Lord say that. This is a year both to turn and to return. A year to turn and to return. And so there are certain people in certain places, and God is pivoting you. He's shifting you from the journey that you were on. And then there's some folks that used to be on the right road, and you got off track. And He's shifting you back. He's calling you. Return, 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 return back. Exodus chapter 14, verse 10 through 16, the New Living Translation. As Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. They cried out to the Lord and they said to Moses, "Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness." But Moses told the people, "Don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord Himself will fight for you. Just stay calm." And then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving. Pick up your staff and raise your hand over the sea. Divide the water so the Israelites can walk through the middle of the sea on dry ground." And I'm speaking today simply from the subject, handle the challenge. Handle the challenge. Isn't it interesting here that the children of Israel, as they were out in the middle of the wilderness, they were far away from Egypt, but they had not gotten to the promised land yet. And now they see Pharaoh's army coming behind them. And then they said, now, we told you. Whenever there is challenge and controversy in our life, we always want to find somebody to blame. Whenever we start going through trouble, we want to blame somebody for our troubles and say, you know what, see the mess you done got us in now. But every time that you're on your way to a better place, there's always risk involved. And you have to be aware that there is always risk when you're ever trying to improve your life. There's always a risk involved. In fact, there is always, in front of every prophetic promise that God has for your life, there's always a problem. In front of every prophetic promise, there's always a problem, some threat. You know, we all want the honey in life, but nobody wants to deal with the bees. And you see, if you're really hungry for the honey, you got to be willing to risk being stung. And I don't know about you, I'm going to get some honey on my finger. I don't care if I get stung and my hand is swollen, at least it's going to have some honey on it. You got to be, if you get hungry enough, it's enough. Now, if you got an allergy that might close up your windpipe, now that might be a different situation. But if I'm really hungry and if I really want the sweet stuff in life, I'm going to have to take a risk. See, there's always going to be some bees with a stinger in their tail to keep people who are not hungry enough away. But the bees are always surrounding the sweet stuff in life. So there's always a threat to your freedom. There's always a threat to your prosperity. There's always a threat to your development of where you're going in life. There is going to be a challenge that you're going to find. So just take that as normal. Life has challenges. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you just got married and lived happily ever after? But there's a whole lot in between marriage and then living happily ever after. They don't tell you that some days you're going to want to scratch their eyeballs out. Isn't it amazing? I say this to you, that promises are easy to profess, but challenging to possess. They're so easy to profess. The promises of God that we should be the head and not the tail, above only and not beneath. All of this stuff is so easy to just profess these things, but it's very challenging to actually possess the promise. And so we have to realize that there's always going to be something from the underworld that is going to come and threaten the very promises that God has given to you. When God begins to prophesy into your life, there's going to be something that will threaten it, that makes it look like what God has said is not going to come to pass in your life. And let me say this to you. The devil himself is really not interested in darkness. Hear this prophetically. The devil is not interested in darkness, but what he's interested in is using vessels of light for the purposes of darkness. So if the devil can take a vessel of light and use them for darkness, that's how he gets his greatest glory and joy. He takes a demon and converts them into an angel of light so that he can use a vessel of light to use it for the purposes of darkness. That's why he always wants to go after your good child. And that's why you don't get certain challenges until you made up your mind that I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all the way with God. As soon as you sell out to Jesus, all hell breaks loose. You'll be surprised. And I don't want you to just think that because you have a promise from God, some people have just declared when a new year comes in, they just automatically assume that, hey, this is going to be my breakthrough year. No, this is not just going to automatically be your breakthrough year. You have to do something. You have to do something. Don't expect a sudden breakthrough of the promise without your obedience, without your discipline, and without your consistency. You see, there are certain things. God says, if you be willing and obedient. You know, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 19. If you be willing and obedient, ye shall eat the good of the land. There are certain things. Don't expect for God to all of a sudden just give you a breakthrough. A breakthrough is always the result of a buildup. A breakthrough is always the result of a buildup where you have just been diligent in building up, in obedience, in discipline, in consistency. It's impossible to be consistent if you're not disciplined. And it takes discipline to be obedient. They all work together. If you really want to break through, you have to say, God, I'm serious this time. I'm going to obey you. I hear you. I want to eat the good of the land. If you be willing and obedient, willing and obedient, willing and obedient, then you shall eat the good of the land. There's an obedience, there's a discipline, there is a consistency, there is a willingness that comes there. And we have to build that discipline, that diligence, that consistency in our life if we want to have our breakthrough. So there's a buildup that comes from consistently doing something and then suddenly the breakthrough. Whatever it is that you want to master in your life, just start working diligently at it in little steps, through daily practice, just staying faithful and committed. You got to serve 3 customers like you would serving 3,000. You got to take it. I don't care. If you don't have but 10 customers, serve those 10 like you got 10,000. You can't just wait. You can't skimp on people. You got to do this thing with everything that you've got. You know, I remember years ago when, other preachers from the country, they just start preaching on, Ezekiel, and they would talk about the foot bone connected to the ankle bone connected to the leg bone connected to the hip bone. No. I said, you know what, I'm going to do something a little different. And so I memorized the 206 bones in the human body. And so when I was doing it, I started off with the metatarsals and coming up through the tibia and the fibia, and the femur and all, what a hip bone and leg bone and ankle bone. And so I did something, I went the extra mile. And so when people then came into a service of mine and they heard this man, this teenager walking through and calling, the name of the real name of the bones in the body. I didn't call it the funny bone, it's the humerus. And so it set something, it set me apart because I went an extra mile to do something differently. And you got to be willing to do something that other people are not going to be doing if you want to stand out. You got to find out, how is it that I can serve in my organization? How is it that I can serve in my business that will cause this place to be able to stand out in the minds of others? What am I going to do that's going to go the extra mile? Nobody told me to do that. But I was just wondering, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And it's interesting that every person in the world that ever becomes great, they become great because they addressed a problem. Martin Luther King Jr. became great because he addressed a problem. Moses became great because he addressed a problem. David became great because he addressed a problem with Goliath. You don't just become great just because of who you are and how much money you make. You're great because you address a problem. You solve a problem. You solve a problem. And God uses problems. Here are at least 5 ways that God uses problems in your life. And I know people say, please, Lord, I got enough of those. Please. But God does use problems. Number one, God uses problems to direct you, because problems can oftentimes point you in a new direction, and then they can help motivate you to change. They can help motivate you to change. I mean, it's trying to get your attention in a brand new way. I had a problem because I accessed my Facebook account while I was over in China, and Facebook is banned in China when I did so, and it just shut my whole Facebook account down. I still can't access it now. And when they shut that down and created a problem for me, I said, okay, I can't use my Facebook now. So it caused me to open up a LinkedIn account. I just posted something the other day on my LinkedIn account. Picture of my wife and I, we got over 1.3 million views. I never would have gone to LinkedIn had I not been shut down from Facebook. Listen, when one door closes, look for another one. Look for another one. God uses problems to direct you. God uses problems to direct you. God uses problems to direct you. Secondly, God uses problems to inspect you. You don't know what you've got in you until you get in trouble. You're like a tea bag. You don't know what's on the inside of you until you get in hot water. When you get in hot water, then it's coming out. You don't know who people are as long as you're asking them to do things that they want to do and that they are in agreement with anyway. You don't know who people are until you tell them no. Until you tell them something they don't want to hear from you, and then that's when you see the real demon. I mean, as long as a guy is trying to slide up and get them digits, giving you that line, but when the woman says to you, no, the shop is closed until you put a ring on it. When they take that, then go on in. Then you'll see the real. God uses problems to inspect you, to direct you, and then to inspect you. But God uses problems. He has a way of being able to use problem areas in your life. Then God uses problems, thirdly, to correct you. Because there are some lessons that are only learned through pain and failure. And listen, please remember this, that learning is a gift even when pain is the teacher. But God will use problems to correct you. Children oftentimes don't learn not to touch hot things until they've touched something hot and been burned. You can tell a baby all you want, baby, don't touch this, it's hot. Don't touch this, baby, this is hot. And then one day they put the hand up there and all of a sudden now, the pain of that experience corrected them from ever touching a hot thing again. And even when that baby comes near that hot thing, the mama doesn't have to tell them, don't touch this baby hot. The baby will say, hot mama. Hot, mama. Mama, hot. So God can use problems to correct you. He uses problems to direct you. He uses problems to inspect you. He uses problems to correct you. He can use problems, fourthly, to protect you. To protect you. A problem can be a blessing in disguise if it prevents you from being harmed in something that is set in your way. There was a man who worked in the World Trade Center during the time of the 9/11 attacks. And do you know that day of all days, he had a problem? He overslept. And then he jumped up and realized that he was running late to work and got out there and got in his car, and his car wouldn't start. And that problem saved his life. That problem saved his life. Sometimes you can be looking for something at home and can't find your keys or your shoes or your glasses, your pocketbook, and you don't understand why in the world can I find this. God might have known that there was going to be somebody that was going to run the light at an intersection, and had you been on time, you would have been going through there. You don't ever know what God is protecting you from. You never know what God is protecting you from, but God uses problems. And so sometimes you have to say, when I have this problem, God, is this something that you're trying to protect me from in my life? Because God does use problems to be able to protect us. And finally, God uses problems to perfect us. To perfect us. Because problems, when responded to appropriately, problems build character. Problems build character. They can help us to learn to be patient. God uses problems to perfect us. He uses problems to perfect us. And I'm telling you, Psalm chapter 4 in verse 1, the psalmist here saying, he says, hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. God, you made me bigger when I was under stress and pressure, when I had a problem in my life. You enlarged me. You expanded me. You caused my capacity to increase. You grew me while I was under stress, while I had a problem. Thank God, if we never had a problem, we'd never know that God could solve them, and we wouldn't know what faith in His Word could do. You see, your problems help you to grow up. Your problems help you to grow up. There are some people that just never grow up because they've never learned how to handle problems. So this is why we're talking today, handle the challenge, handle the challenge, handle the challenge. Nobody wants to hear excuses. Well, baby, I can't come over and see you because it's raining. See, I don't want to hear the excuse. Yeah, I got tired up. I was sleeping when I got home, that reason, because I was planning on calling you and everything. Nobody wants to hear your excuse. I was going to get you a real nice gift and everything, but what had happened was, nobody is interested in your excuse. Your employer is not interested in your excuse. Your customer is not interested in your excuse. Your husband, your wife is not interested in your excuse. Your children are not interested in your excuse. For a parent, the parent is not interested in a child's excuse. Why didn't you get this done? They don't want excuses. They want results. You either have excuses or results, but you can't have both. And so that's why your problems help you to grow up. They'll give you a fresh experience with God. The other day, over the Christmas holidays, I ordered a new bathrobe from Macy's, and they shipped it to me. When they shipped it to me, they had one of those inventory control tags on. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not taking this back down to the store to have them take this off. They're going to think I stole it when I try to go back in the store. I paid for it. They shipped it to me. Why would they ship this thing to me, this big old inventory control thing hanging on my clothes, and I can't even get it off? I got a hammer, I got pliers, I took it to everything trying to... But I struggled with that thing, and I wrestled with that thing, and I looked at my wife, and I told her, I said, I can't get it off. I can't get it off. I got the screwdrivers, I got all kind of things. Every tool that we had, I tried it. And do you know, yesterday morning, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had this robe on. I had the robe on, inventory control thing on it and all. And I have a little pad that I get down to pray. And I'm telling you, I believe in the power of prayer. And I'm telling you, when I got down, God is my witness. When I got down on my knees and just began to pray with my hands on the chair in front of me and began to pray, I didn't realize that what had my robe locked up had been released until I finished praying. When I got up, I saw something on the ground. And I'm just here to tell you that God is able. If you ever get in a real bind and something has you on lockdown, when you pray, I'm just telling you, God can unleash you from habits and addictions and burdens and stresses and anxieties that you have tried medicine and tools and doctors. Is anybody in this place that knows what I am talking about? He can get you free of a pain. He can get you free of a burden. I'm just here to tell you, God is real. I know Him for myself. I know Him for myself. I know Him. I got a robe at home to prove it. I'm so inclined to believe the words of John Dewey when he says, we only think when we are confronted with a problem. Isn't it amazing? We only think when we are confronted with a problem. That's why people don't like problems, because a problem forces you to think. And we never think until we have a problem. We don't think until we have a problem. Until we have a problem. That's what's wrong with too much amusement. The whole world is trying to amuse us. And you know I'm an etymologist, so when you look at the word amusement, a means not. Muse means to think. Amuse means not thinking. Amusement is the state of. So when you are in amusement, it is the state of your not thinking. And so while you're being entertained by series and mini-series and stuff that you can get on demand, you can't develop your life if you're not thinking. You can't get out of debt if you're not thinking. You can't solve your problem if you're not thinking. You can't go to the next level if you're not thinking. Is anybody in this house? I pray that God will give you a disdain for overindulgence in entertainment so you can start thinking. That's why God will introduce some problems into you so you think. You think. And that's the thing that frustrates me with social media, that it gives people the luxury of being able to just, fluently express their opinions without going through the pain of thought. We experience the pleasure of opinion without the pain of thought. And that's why God has to give us problems in our life so that we think about some things. Problems force you to think. Problems force you to think. So God's put you in the world to think. He gave you a mind. You're supposed to love God with your heart, mind, soul, strength, your body. You love God with your mind. So God says, I'm going to give you some problems. You're going to have to think your way out of this. I'm not going to tell you all the answers. Think through it. Think through it. That's why he says, consider the ant and be wise. Think about what this ant is doing. You figure out what you need to do. They don't spend everything they get. They work while things are going well, and they save. They save for another season. They save for another season. He says, look at the ant, people. Don't spend everything you got in one season. I don't care if it is on sale. Oh. Alan Supporter said that the best way to escape from a problem is to solve it. The best way to escape from a problem is to solve it. And sometimes the best way to conquer an enemy is to make him a friend. You'd be surprised. I love the words of Albert Einstein that the problems that exist in the world today cannot be solved by the same level of thinking that created them. Isn't that amazing? That means that whenever you have a problem, you're going to have to grow to another level. Because when you solve a problem, it leaves you at a higher level of knowledge. It leads you at a higher level of authority. And it leaves you at a higher level of responsibility. So your problems cannot be solved by the same level of thinking that created them. Problems force you to think. And once you think, it's going to develop your problem-solving capacity. And let me just tell you this. Never, ever assume that you're too old to handle a challenge. Some people are like, child, I done got too old for that. No, you're not too old. Who told you that you were too old? That's a problem with somebody else's perspective that told you that you're too old to do something. Can I just give you a few facts? Benjamin Franklin did not invent bifocals until he was 78 years old, and probably when he needed them the most. He had a problem with trying to see himself, so he invented bifocals. 78. Not all innovation comes from millennials and Generation Z. You can be in your 70s and 80s and learn how to disrupt stuff. Are you listening? I hope that somebody with gray hair or no hair gets motivated today. I really do. Winston Churchill wrote a book that won him a Nobel Peace Prize for literature when he was 78 years old. Nelson Mandela, at the age of 75, was inducted as the president of South Africa after sitting in prison for 27 years. 75, and he became the president. Grandma Moses, a phenomenal artist, didn't sell her first piece of art until she was 90 years old. It set her up for retirement. She didn't make her first sale until she was 90. But if you're going to have money at the beginning of your life or the end, choose to have it at the end. I'm just telling you. Michelangelo didn't begin his awesome work on St. Peter's Basilica until he was 72 years old. And he was creative as ever. In September of 2019, Magayama Yaramati, an Indian woman, became the oldest woman in the world to give birth to a child. And she had twins at 74 years old. She and her old husband. Can you imagine at 79 years old going down to the school trying to register your child in kindergarten? Your twins at 79 years old, you and your old husband going down. Come on, baby. 79, became the oldest mother, but she's a mother. She had been trying to have a baby all of her life, and her lucky break didn't come until she was 74, and bam, bam, here come twins. 74 years old. Don't let old age make you afraid to take a challenge. In 2013, an 80-year-old Japanese man by the name of Yuichiro Miuro became the oldest man to ever climb Mount Everest. 80 years old, and he went up Mount Everest. 80 years old, an 80-year-old Japanese man. 80 years old. Of course, it was dangerous, but he did it. He did it. In 2007, a woman by the name of Nola Ochs, O-C-H-S, became the oldest woman to ever graduate college with a bachelor's degree at 95 years old. 95 years old. She graduated. And listen, not only did she graduate at 95, but for the next 5 years, until she was 100 years old, she took additional classes. She lived to 105 years old and just died in 2016.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. We pray that this message has encouraged, equipped, and empowered you to live a more victorious life. Join us next time for Power for Living with Dale C. Bronner, where revelation is power. Power for Living.